All right, let's move on to some other news now, and the latest from the Middle East, where UNRWA, the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, has warned that an Israeli ban on its operations could lead to the collapse of humanitarian work in Gaza. Israel has rejected the warning, claiming the agency only carries out a small percentage of aid work in the Strip. Earlier, Israel formally told the UN it was cutting ties with UNRWA after accusing some staff of colluding with Hamas during the October 7th attacks. The U.S. State Department says Israel still isn't allowing enough aid into northern Gaza and says UNRWA's role is crucial.
So right now, there is no other way to distribute aid in sufficient form. And that's why the Secretary made clear in the letter that we were opposed to the legislation, because UNRWA plays a critical role. Now, there are other humanitarian organizations that operate inside Gaza that are delivering aid. There are other UN agencies that are operating inside Gaza, but we see UNRWA as continuing to play a critical role.
The U.S. has also urged Israel to take action over violence by settlers in the occupied West Bank. It follows the torching of more than a dozen cars near Ramallah. The U.S. State Department says it is also deeply concerned by reports of Palestinians being attacked by settlers who damaged property, assaulted civilians, and released dogs to attack residents. Elsewhere, it has emerged in Israel that several people, including a spokesperson in the Prime Minister's office, have been arrested for allegedly leaking documents that may have compromised a ceasefire and hostage release deal. The allegations suggest that classified documents were taken, amended, and then leaked to the press in order to benefit the Israeli government's agenda. Our correspondent in Jerusalem, John Donison, is following the story.
Well, the allegation here is that Eli Fieldstein, a spokesperson in Prime Minister Netanyahu's office, as well as at least 3 other people working for Israel's intelligence services, were involved in leaking stories to newspapers to try and further Mr. Netanyahu's political aims and goals in Gaza. Now, those stories were leaked to 2 newspapers, the Jewish Chronicle in Great Britain and also the German newspaper Bild. So, for example, one of the stories that appeared in the Jewish Chronicle suggested that Hamas was trying to smuggle out the then leader of Hamas in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, out through tunnels into Egypt. And that led to, and this came at a time when Mr. Netanyahu was trying to argue that he needed to keep an Israeli presence on the border with Egypt and Gaza in order to stop that happening. And that then led to ceasefire talks between Hamas and Israel not going anywhere. At least that is the allegation. So what the families of some of the hostages still being held in Gaza are saying, and what the opposition is saying here in Israel, is that in effect these leaks were aimed at undermining those UN-led efforts to secure a ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel. Now, Mr. Netanyahu has denied that his office was involved in this, but the investigation is ongoing, and it's going to be something to watch over the coming weeks and months. As for the Jewish Chronicle in Great Britain, well, the journalist who wrote those stories has now stopped working for that newspaper, and those stories were removed from the website because they just didn't seem to be credible. So, as I say, it's a story to watch over the coming weeks.
John Donison there. Meanwhile, Iran is